Greetings. Well, today I'm going to. I have a dreadful cold, first of all, so I can't be so eloquent as I might wish. But of course, last Friday the 13th, a dreadful occurrence occurred in Paris, and I have to conclude, using my vast geopolitical and historical knowledge, that the attack in Paris was organized by none other than our dear Mr. Vladimir Putin. So he's the culprit. Of course, when massacres of this magnitude occur, you can't hope that all things will be revealed. Who organized, why, who were the organizers, who were the executors, like Putin said for his planes that were shot down over Egypt, and they were shot down, of course, by the American Empire using ISIS, and now Putin, in his impotent rage, has directed his part of ISIS to attack at the very heart of Western Europe, at the city of Paris. Of course, he's now looking at the response and deciding whether he will organize Islamic attacks in America, which I think is quite harder, because if you strike at America, then you have to deal with a much stronger response. So far, all the response has been in Russia's favor. And of course, if you go, I have a site called geopoliticaltimes.com, There you can, of course, Google indexed me the other day, so there's absolutely no profit. I have absolutely no profit from it, but of course it is the best source for geopolitical and news concerning investing in equities. And also we have a section that archives Warren Buffett's news about Warren Buffett. Now we see, for example, on Geopolitical Times, Russia says bomb down plane in Egypt and intensifies attack on ISIS. But what I want to tell you about today is my new site, geoeconomist.com, where my original articles will be posted. And I posted already the seminal article, The Paris Attack Was Organized by Vladimir Putin. And of course I didn't quite exactly write this article, because I hate writing. I am one of those persons who believes that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I collated, I must admit, certain analysis from the great site, A Window on Eurasia, that is led by Paul Goebel, and we will now try to read several things that he says concerning the attacks. While there is as yet no direct evidence of Moscow's complicity in the Paris terrorist attacks, and if these were well organized by special services, which I believe they were, no one would expect there to be. Moscow is clearly the chief beneficiary of those acts of violence, according to the Kiev Center for Research on the Army, Conversion and Disarmament. Analysts there told Ksenia Kirillova that tragedy in Paris fits perfectly into the strategy of a multiplicity of conflicts, which Moscow is methodically conducting. The maximum destabilization of the situation in the EU will increasingly shatter European and Euro-Atlantic solidarity. Mikhail Samus, the deputy director of the center, points out that in fact, of course, there is no evidence of the direct involvement of Russia in the terrorist actions in Paris, and this is natural. All such things are the work of the special services, and they do not publish their business plans. However, the way in which Russia has discussed these horrific actions, he continues, shows that the Kremlin is trying to use the tragedy in Paris in its interests to the maximum extent possible. Some Moscow commentators have suggested that, quote, if the French have any pride, they'll vote for Putin's well-known friend, Marine Le Pen. Others have suggested that the European Union should work with Russia against ISIS, but for this first remove the junta from Kiev. And still others, including the Russian Foreign Ministry, have said Moscow expects NATO to change its priorities after Paris and cooperate with, rather than seek to contain, Russia. Of course, Russia will have to be contained. The strategy delineated by Kennan will be implemented again. Moreover, there has been an increase in the number of Russian commentators who argue that Europe should stop listening to and following the United States vis-à-vis the world, and start listening to Russia instead. Europeans, these writers say, need to think about their own national interests and the lives of their citizens, rather than the interests of American elites. Ukrainian military experts are not the only ones who have warned about such a tactic on Russia's part, Kirillova observes, noting that already in September, the Minsk Center for Strategic and Foreign Policy Research published a report suggesting the same thing. According to Samus, one might have expected such a propaganda campaign in the wake of a terrorist action to prove counterproductive, especially after Russia's Anschluss of Crimea and aggression elsewhere in Ukraine. But the West has not been capable of recognizing that Islamist terrorists and pro-Russian radical Orthodox terrorists are much the same. The two represent a similar threat to global security, the Ukrainian analyst argues. Both the first and the second, without thinking, killed tens, hundreds, even thousands of peaceful Europeans in the name of their ideological postulates. Both the first and the second throw challenges to the civilized world, and both consider Europeans perverted, corrupt creatures. Samus says that the world will not be able to defeat terrorism selectively, as it is trying to do now. Only a total war and unconditional destruction of all terrorists and their backers, regardless of their gas or oil resources, will work. Failing that, he says, European capitals will be exchanging expressions of sympathy after new attacks in the future.